Thank you for tuning in. This is Lance, your host of Strange Bites, where we take real science and wrap it up in a creative story and serve it in 15 minutes or less. If you're enjoying the show, please hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Give me a follow on social media. And now, let's jump into the next bite. Every living thing that you have ever loved is a library. A single gram of DNA can hold about 215 million gigabytes of information. That is the recipe for you, for a fern, for a virus, for every ancestor who ever survived long enough to pass a letter forward. Life has been writing itself down for 4 billion years. It never asked for a hard drive. It was one. And then, in a lab in Pennsylvania, someone asked that library to do something it was never built to do. Sit still, conduct electricity, or remember a voltage after the lights go out. Episode 52 is not about encoding your vacation photos into genes. That is a different kind of magic. We will leave it on the shelf. Tonight is stranger. Tonight, scientists took short, custom-made strands of DNA, dusted them with silver, pressed them against a crystal, and built a tiny switch that stores and thinks in the same place. They taught the molecule of life to act like a synapse. Imagine a resistor, the humble little component in every piece of electronics you own. Current goes in, current meets resistance. Current comes out weaker. When you cut the power, it forgets. It is a door that slams shut the moment you stop pushing. Now imagine a door that remembers how hard you pushed last time. That's a memristor. Memory plus resistor. Its resistance is not fixed. It depends on the history of the current that has already flowed through it. After you kill the power, it still knows. It is the electronic cousin of a synapse, the place in your brain where a thought is both stored and computed. For years, people have chased memristors because artificial intelligence is starving for them. Modern computers are terrible at thinking. They keep their memories in one building and their thinking in another. And they spend a fortune and energy running back and forth with notes. Your brain does not do that. The synapse is the note and the reader at once. The problem is energy. The problem is always energy. Bed Powdell, a research professor of material science at Penn State, put it simply. Usually, it takes more power to store more information. Data centers drink rivers. Training a large model can cost as much electricity as a small town. If we want machines that consider many inputs at once, the way a brain does, we need memory that sips instead of gulps. So the team went hunting in two kingdoms that do not usually speak. One kingdom is biology. The other is a family of crystals called perovskites. You have already met them if you have ever read about next generation solar cells. They are good at moving charge. They are also full of little defects, tiny vacancies where ions can wander. Those wandering ions can flip a material from resist a lot to resist a little. That flip is memory. Perovskites on their own are moody. Air, moisture, heat, they sulk. DNA on its own is a terrible wire. Natural DNA is long and tangled. Wet spaghetti that will not sit neatly in a thin film. The trick was to stop using nature's DNA the way nature uses it. Kavan Karemeye, a postdoctoral researcher in material science at Penn State, said the quiet part out loud. Biology and electronics are different domains. Bridging them requires an entirely new materials platform. They did not extract a gene from a cell and pray. They ordered short, chemically synthesized strands, 22 letters long, designed on a computer for length and composition. Neela Yenawar, who directs a biomolecular facility at Penn State's Hooke Institute, explains why that matters. You can decide exactly which sequence you need. You can dope those strands with silver and other ions. You can make DNA stop being a floppy macromolecule and start being a programmable nanomaterial. Silver nanoparticles were the handshake. Sprinkle them onto a synthetic DNA and two things happen. The strands line up instead of knotting, and they begin to conduct. DNA, for a moment, learns to carry a current. Then they stack the sandwich, silver on top, a layered quasi-two-dimensional perovskite in the middle, a crystal with the formula PeA2MaPb2I7, or methylammonium lead iodide, a lattice of organic molecules in lead iodide. Then the silver doped DNA and platinum on the bottom. It looks, on paper, like a grocery store list from a mad scientist. In the dark of the lab, it is the door that remembers. They turned the voltage down until it was almost an insult, less than 1/10 of a volt. Your wall outlet is 120. The switch listened to a whisper. No harsh forming step. Many memory devices need a violent first jolt to punch a path through the material, like kicking a frozen lock. This one opened. When they reversed the current, it answered. Electrons found biohybrid pathways, little channels where DNA and crystal had taught each other how to behave. Karamani said it plainly. DNA alone, or perovskite alone, did not come close. It was the combination. The numbers, if you like numbers, are the kind that make engineers lean forward. The on-to-off ratio, how clearly 1 looks different from 0, was greater than 100,000 to 1. They could cycle it about 1,000 times. It held its state for more than 4,000 seconds in the formal test, and devices still worked after more than 6 weeks, sitting in ordinary air, unencapsulated. It kept working near 120 degrees Celsius, almost 250 Fahrenheit. Change the current limit, and you get more than 2 states, multiple levels, more than 1 bit in a cell. In their arrays, about 94% of the devices worked. Power density dropped to something almost rude, 1/100th of a watt per square centimeter. Press language said 100 times less power than comparable memories. The paper also showed the hybrids sipping far less than their own perovskite only and DNA only controls. A patent was filed. The work was published in Advanced Functional Materials. Penn State and the University of Cincinnati shared the bench. The National Science Foundation had already been funding the larger dream, a program that asked whether synthetic DNA and semiconductors could live in the same house. Now let me tell you what they did not do, because the headlines will try to steal the story. They did not write a novel into a double helix and read it back with a sequencer. That is archival DNA storage, a real field, a different spell. Here, DNA is not the book. DNA is the furniture. It organizes the room. It stabilizes the crystal. It offers silver roads for charge. It is a designed interface, 22 long letters asked to be architecture instead of ancestry. That is almost more intimate. We did not copy life's filing system. We borrowed life's shape and taught it to switch. So let's picture a lab after hours. Pennsylvania winter pressing the windows. A thin film no thicker than a rumor. Someone applies a voltage so small your tongue would not feel it on a battery. The crystal's ions shift. The silver-laced helix holds the path open or closes it. The meter ticks. The state remains after the power dies. For a moment, a piece of the oldest memory technology on Earth is doing what your neurons do when you remember a face. Powdell said, "Nature has the solution. We just have to find it and apply it." That sentence is either humble or terrifying. I haven't decided which. We have spent a century building minds out of sand. Silicone is brilliant. It is also a glutton. Every time a model thinks, it is really a trillion little errands between a warehouse of memory and a factory of logic. The errands are the bill. The planet is already paying in heat, in water, in the quiet hum of buildings that never sleep. The memristor is an attempt to cancel the errand. Store the weight where you use the weight. Update it with a whisper. That is neuromorphic computing. Not because it's mystical, but because it is automatically closer to the only thinking machine we have ever fully trusted. the wet one in your skull. Now slide DNA into that picture and the philosophy gets sharper. DNA is not sacred because it is pretty. It is sacred because it is the first successful long-term memory. It survives replication errors, ice ages, the boredom of deep time. It is also, in this experiment, just another polymer with useful phosphates and stackable bases. The researchers did not worship it, they engineered it. Short, rigid, silver-doped, obedient. That is the fork in the road. One future is practical and almost kind. Memory that sips, phones that last, data centers that do not drink a river to remember a sentence, artificial systems that can hold more states in less space because a biological scaffold taught a crystal to behave. If AI is going to sit in every clinic, every grid, every pocket, something has to make a thought cheaper. This is a candidate. Still small, still lab bound. 1,000 cycles is not a career. 6 weeks is not a decade. Perovskite, still fear the weather. But the direction is honest. Another future is quieter and stranger. If the boundary between biology and electronics is only a materials problem, then life and machine are not two kingdoms. They are two recipes. We are already writing proteins with software and genomes with language models. Now we are asking the Helix to be a wire. The next ask is obvious. Make the interface denser. Make the states more analog, more synapse-like. Grow the array on the back of a chip. Let a model update itself in the same molecules that hold it. At that point, we will have taught the oldest library on Earth to think without being alive. There is a tenderness in that and a theft. Tenderness because we finally admitted that 4 billion years of chemistry might be better at packing meaning than anything we invent in a clean room. Theft because we took the molecule that makes a child possible and asked it to serve a server farm. No cell was harmed. No sequence of a person was copied. And still, we use the shape of inheritance as a component. Ask what kind of mind we are building, if its memory is borrowed from life, but its purposes are not. A brain-like chip does not wake up and love you. It does not mourn. It does, however, inherit a trick life learned under pressure. Keep the past in the same place you decide the future. That is not consciousness, it is something adjacent, and we should not pretend we know the distance. Look 20 years forward to a clinic where a diagnostic model runs on a wafer that costs pennies of power. Its weight sitting in hybrid cells that a perovskite and a designed helix made possible. Imagine a hearing aid, a sensor in a dying forest, a probe on a cold moon, all of them thinking locally because memory no longer has to shout across a chip. Imagine too the data center that never needs to be that large, and the ones that get built anyway because cheaper thought is also cheaper surveillance, cheaper weapons, cheaper persuasion. Tools do not choose, we do. We are very bad at choosing slowly. There is a last implication, more personal. You are, right now, a memristor the size of a skull. Every story you have kept has slightly changed the resistance of some path in you. That is why a smell can drop you through a decade. That is why a voice on a recording still has weight. Life already solved in-memory computing. We are only now building a crude, beautiful parody of it. And we use life's own ink to do it. The helix that remembers is not a soul in a crystal. It is a reminder. The most efficient memory we have ever found was never in a warehouse. It was in a body, copying itself in the dark. We asked that darkness for a switch. It gave us one. The question is not whether we can make machines remember like us. The question is whether we will remember what the memory was for. That's it for today's bite. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Give me a follow on social media. Share it with a friend. Until next time, stay strange and question everything.